In this video, we're going to look at how to use SQLAlchemy to access a database and buy and sell coins. But first, let's take a look at the extensions that you're going to need to develop the code. If you're following along with the GitHub repository, the instructions for installing these are already there. But you'll go over here to the sidebar and you'll click on the extensions icon. And then up here in the search bar, you're going to want to search for Python. Now, I've already got it installed on this machine, but you'll want to install the extension for Python from Microsoft. Then the other one is for SQLite, and the one that you're going to use, especially if you're running in code spaces, is this one here, the SQLite Viewer for VS Code by Florian Klampfer. So again, SQLAlchemy is an object relational manager, which basically means we're going to declare Python classes that are going to be mapped to SQL tables in a database, which will be SQLite for the purpose of this demonstration. And so that way, we don't have to use any SQL statements, we just write Python code instead. All right, so first thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get the base class, or generate an instance of the base class for which all of the model classes are going to be derived. And that's going to be in the SQLAlchemy. So from SQLAlchemy.orm module, I'm going to import this factory function called declarative base. And then I just need to create an instance of declarative base. Now, this is the simplest possible thing you can do. A lot of this, this is part of the boilerplate that we're going to be, you're going to see some more boilerplate later on. But now that I've got that, I can derive my model class, my investment class, from the base class. But first of all, I need to get some other types that I'm going to use to create the columns in the investment model class. And that's going to come from SQLAlchemy. And I'm going to import, this is going to be kind of a long list. So there's a column type for the columns. Then I'm going to have an ID column, which is going to be an integer. I'm going to have a string column for the coin name. I have a float column for the quantity that we're going to purchase. I'm going to use a Boolean to determine whether or not this is going to be a, whether or not we're buying a coin or selling a coin. And finally, I'm going to timestamp all of the investments, and I'll use a date time for that. There's also, to get the default value for the date time, I'm going to use this, this func object here. All right, so now let's create that model class. And it'll just be a class. I'm going to call it investment. And again, it has to derive from that base class. Now, by default, SQLAlchemy will create a table. It's going to generate these tables for us. We don't have to do the create table stuff. And worry about getting all that right. SQLAlchemy is going to create those tables for us. And by default, it will use the name of the class. It'll normalize. It'll do some normalization. So in this case, it would just be an investment all lowercase. However, you can change that by using this dunder table name and assigning it a new name. And I'm going to say investments plural. Okay, now for the columns. I'm going to have an ID. That's going to be a column. The type is going to be integer. This is going to be the primary key. So I'm going to set that keyword argument to true. It's also going to auto increment. So in other words, we don't have to provide these values. We're going to let SQLAlchemy auto increment everything, and that way we don't have to worry about them being unique. Then for the coin, this is going to be a string, and it's required. In other words, it's not nullable, so the nullable keyword argument is false. Quantity will be very similar, except it'll be a float. And then for buy sell. So there are two types of investments. You can either buy a coin or you can sell a coin. This is a binary situation, so it would be appropriate to use a Boolean type to represent that. I'm going to use a default value here of true. So what this means is that by default, all investments will be buys if we do not provide a value for the buy-sell column. And if it's false, then it's going to be a sell. This is also nullable, not nullable rather. And then finally, the timestamp. This is going to be a date time. And default value, I'm going to use this func. I'm going to call the now method, and this will return the current date time. And this will be represented on the Python side, at least, as a Python datetime object. And it is also not nullable. All right, now for some more boilerplate to actually connect to the database. So to connect to the database, we're going to create an engine. So I'm going to need this create engine function. Also, while I'm up here, I'm going to need this session maker factory function. And where's all my boilerplate code? Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to create an engine using the create engine function. And like I said, this is going to be what connects to the database. So we need to tell it, give the connection string for the database. In the case of SQLite, we'll use the SQLite protocol. And then the three dashes are going to say look for a file named portfolio DB, because SQLite is file based. If this does not exist, then we will create a table in the database for every class that derives from for every model class that derives from the base class. And the way it will connect to that database again is through the engine. In order to interact with the database in the application, we're going to use a session. And so we're going to create, this is actually not the session we're going to use. This uppercase session will actually create the session we're going to use. This uppercase session is created by the session maker factory function, and we will need to bind that to an engine as well. Well, if I can type here. And then finally, the session that we will use in the code is there. This, if you don't understand this, it's largely boilerplate. Right now, what you just need to know is that this is what we'll be interacting with in the code. All right, let's add a command to buy a coin. Go down here to the bottom. There we go. And again, this is going to be a command. So I'll use click.command. And I'll add two arguments. I'll add click.argument. I'll add the coin to purchase. And also, I'll need the quantity. So I'll get an argument for that. And I can specify the type here, actually, if I want to. So I can say the type is going to be equal to float. By default, the type will be string, so I didn't need to provide one for the coin. All right, so now I will say def by coin. And, of course, I'm going to need the coin and quantity parameters. And first thing I'll do is I'll create a new investment. I'll initialize an investment model class. I'll pass it the coin and the quantity. Remember the buy sell by default is going to be true for a buy, and timestamp will always use the current time, date time, so I don't need to provide those. I'll add the new investment to the session, and then finally I'll commit it to the database. I'm going to tell the user, hey, what we just did, and for that I'll use the console from rich again. This time I'm going to call the print method on the console, and I'm going to show you the rich markup that you can use. It's just a little bit different syntax to create formatted text very quickly. So I'm going to say that we bought what the quantity was and what the coin is. And I'm going to wrap this part here using this rich markdown or markup. And it's very similar to HTML. It's kind of got a tag-like syntax, except it's using those style syntaxes that we saw for the text message in the previous video. So I'm going to say this is going to be bold green, and then on the other side I need to close it with a closing tag green. Okay, and now all I need to do is add that to the command. Add that command to the group. Whoops, do this one. There we go. And now if I do Python manager --help, I see that I have a new, buy coin command. And I can even get the help for the buy coin command. Let's see here, let's get the help. You can see that it requires arguments for the coin and the quantity. And to use it, let's say Python manager.py, buy coin, and let's get 1.5 or 1.3 rather, Bitcoin. And there we go. It says we bought 1.3 Bitcoin. And if I go over here to my portfolio DB and click on it, in the portfolio reviewer extension, you'll see here that it did create an investment for 1.3 Bitcoin. SQLite does not have a Boolean data type, so it uses integers to represent the Booleans. 1 is true, 0 is false. And then the timestamp is also represented. With that in mind, we can very easily copy and paste this to create the sell coin command. So I'll say sell coin. Here, I'll have to provide a value for the buy sell column as false to indicate that this is a sell and not a buy. And then I'll also need to change, I'll make this one red, my output. Add this to the group. Take a look here. We have the new sell coin command. If I say Python manager sell coin, and this time we'll say Bitcoin, sell half a Bitcoin, sold half a Bitcoin, go back over to the SQLite viewer, and there we go. Now, this obviously is not doing any kind of error handling. So in other words, if I tried to, I've only got 0.8 Bitcoin left and I tried to sell 2 Bitcoin, it's going to let me do it. That's an enhancement that you can make and submit a pull request, or show us what you did, or show us how you did it at a future meeting. But that is the basics of using SQLAlchemy, and in the next video we'll do something a little more complex.